morning, everybody, or afternoon, depending on where you are. It is December 11th, 2022. We have pretty much wrapped up another college football season. Yesterday was the Army-Navy game. Last night was the Heisman. And we are getting into bowl season. James, how are you doing today, buddy?
Hot and heavy season. I love bowl season. So this is my time of the year. It's the most wonderful time of the year.
I love bowl season.
Absolutely.
Some people hate bowl games, and they're like, what's the point of them? Why don't they get rid of them? And I'm like, what are you talking about? It's more college football. Who cares? I don't get it. I've always loved the bowl season. Now, there's been a little emphasis removed from the bowls with players now opting out, people not participating, et cetera. But still, I can get fired up for a couple bowl games, and I think it's important for some of these teams, to continue to practice. Some of these teams that don't make a bowl game, their season is over. There's no more on the field work. They're already recruiting. They're no longer working with their team. So everybody else who's still playing is continuing to get better in my eyes, and continuing to work. And I think it's good for some of these teams to keep playing. But we've got the college football playoff, and next year we're going to be moving to the 12-team playoff, and I think that's going to benefit everyone. You're either in the 12 or you're not. And I don't think you can really complain if you don't make the top. If you're not in the top 12, that's kind of your fault. But
yeah,
we did get the Heisman Trophy wrapped up last night. And James, I want to get your thoughts on it. Caleb Williams, loses the one game, the close game to Utah during the season, and then they have the rematch, the big rematch in the Pac-12 final. Utah wipes the floor up with USC. However, Caleb Williams still wins the Heisman. What did you think about Caleb Williams being named the Heisman? Do you agree with it? And do you think he is the best player in college football?
That's an interesting question. I would say I don't think he's the best player in college football, but did I think he was going to win the Heisman? I think after the UCLA and Notre Dame game, you want to close strong, and he closed incredibly strong. A lot of voters already got their ballot in before conference championships games. And, I mean, if there was ever a year that someone else could have broken through, this could have been the year. I mean, heck, I sat there thinking about it the other day. If Will Anderson would have had the year he had last year, this year, with all the press and hype, I think we may be talking Will Anderson instead of Caleb Williams. And Will Anderson didn't even make the top 10, and people were questioning he should have been on the up in New York last year. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think he should have been. I think he should have been on the ballot last year for sure. For whatever reason, he didn't seem to have the same type of year this year. For whatever reason, I mean, I maybe teams were rolling protection to him a little bit more. I'm not really 100% sure. I'd have to look at the tape as far as why, Will Anderson wasn't quite as strong. But this was kind of a weird year for the Heisman Trophy. I didn't think anybody really separated themselves. Will Anderson still had 10 sacks. We're sitting here acting like he had a bad year. He had 10 sacks. He had 51 tackles.
But people didn't talk about him. That was the thing is, I mean, honest to God, you never heard people talk about him to the point, go back in the Tennessee game. I don't think they mentioned his name once. And it's hard when you got a player like that. You need to have that Ndamukong Suh moment he had in the Big 12 championship against Texas way back when, where he was just, dominating everywhere. And he never really truly had that kind of a game at all.
No, it wasn't. There wasn't that Heisman moment for him. But what was the Heisman moment for Caleb Williams?
I honestly think you got to go back to the Notre Dame game, especially, where it just seemed like he was just, every time he thought he was down, he was just like spinning out of tackles and throwing for 20-yard gains. Like it seemed like every time he turned around, it was like playground football, and he was making something out of nothing left and right. Now, was it as high profile as like Desmond Howard's punt return or Doug Flutie's pass? No, but who really had that moment this year? Nobody. Nobody really had that, outstanding moment to set themselves up. And since he did it late, he's the guy that came away with it.
Yeah, but I mean, like you said, a lot of people turn their ballots in before the Pac-12 championship game, and honestly, not like I think that would have really hurt him because he played pretty well.
Yeah.
But it's kind of about what you do, leading your team. That's kind of what the Heisman is all about. It's kind of the best player on the best team kind of deal most of the time.
It shouldn't be that. It shouldn't be that way. That's the thing. I mean, you look at the year Lamar Jackson won it. They weren't the best team in the country, but he was the best player and the most outstanding player in the country, and really showed it.
Yeah, and that's how it should be. It should be just the best player, and that's why I think it's kind of a travesty, honestly. Hendon Hooker, in my opinion, deserved to be there.
Oh, 100%.
I know he was injured and he missed the last game, but if you look at his body of work, he still had numbers equal to all these guys. And in my opinion, to take a team that was, at the bottom of the Power Five, at the bottom of the SEC, and put them to a number one ranking during the season.
Agreed.
I think he deserves some credit. I really do. And I know he finished fifth, right behind Stetson Bennett. But in my opinion, I believe he should have been there on top of Stetson Bennett. I think Hendon Hooker deserved to be in New York. And I don't know.
When in that, I'm trying to remember during that South Carolina game, how early did he get hurt in that game?
It was third quarter. He still had a pretty good game. If you're talking about Hendon Hooker himself, he was not the reason that Tennessee was getting trounced.
Oh, God, no.
He still had pretty good numbers. In fact, he finished 25 of 42 for 247 yards and 3 touchdowns and no interceptions. He also had 5 carries for 25 yards. So you're talking he only played about, I believe, a little bit into the third quarter, and he already had 250 yards and 3 touches.
And 25 completions. I mean, you spread that over an entire game, he's probably looking 325, 350, and probably 32 to 33 completions, which is ridiculous numbers. The problem is something we go back to when Steve Belisari was on, is the quarterback gets too much blame or too much credit and too much blame. If they win, they get too much credit. If they lose, they get too much blame.
Depending on who it is.
Yeah, and Hendon Hooker should not get any blame for the South Carolina game. I mean, I'm sorry, he doesn't play defense too. He can't throw to himself. He's only the quarterback. And you look at the numbers he's done, especially over the past 2 years, I'm sorry, he should have been ahead of Stetson Bennett at least. I mean, and at least SEC voters got that right. I mean, heck, I would have put Bryce Young over Stetson Bennett. I would have put Blake Corum over Stetson Bennett. It almost seemed like they wanted to put Stetson Bennett because it's a feel-good story. And don't get me wrong, the kid's a good leader. Look what he's done on the field. But the most outstanding player?
Yeah,
I mean, come on.
He's definitely exceeded my expectations for him. And, I will never say another bad word about Stetson Bennett because what he's done on the field is just unbelievable the past 2 years and winning that national championship game. In fact, having a big part of that win was huge. But do I think he's the Heisman Trophy winner? Hell no. I'm not so sure Caleb Williams is either. I mean, let's be honest, what were the USC signature wins this year? As you mentioned, it was probably UCLA and Notre Dame. Yeah. But, those 2 wins don't really ruffle my feathers a whole lot. I don't. That's just not.
I would personally put UCLA ahead of Notre Dame. I'm just not a big Notre Dame fan, but it was everybody knew him from his Oklahoma days and Coach Riley, and he got hot right at the right time. And let's be honest, when he was on TV, what other games were on? He was getting all the eyes, all the attention at that moment.
Yeah, and he put up some big numbers, but
Yeah.
let's be honest. I mean, this offense is made to put up big numbers, and every quarterback that's come through there at Oklahoma, or whether it be USC now, was able to put up big numbers in Lincoln Riley's offense, and he keeps putting out high. I mean, if you want to win the Heisman Trophy, go play quarterback for Lincoln Riley. That's the way to do it, because
that's
what's
number
that
4.
now? That is now number 4. Baker Mayfield. Kyler Murray,
Caleb
Williams,
Caleb Williams.
I think that's just 3.
I thought he had 4 in a row. Yeah, but maybe I'm wrong.
No, I can't think of the 4th. The Jalen Hurts should have won it, probably, but he did not. But I would have put Jalen Hurts up there in the winnings, because Jalen Hurts was damn good for him. But I know he won. I know he's won 3. But that we'll see. I mean, I just think the Heisman Trophy is kind of turned into a little bit of a popularity contest, in my opinion. And I don't dislike Caleb Williams. I think he's a good quarterback. I think he's a good player, but I'm not so sure he's my Heisman winner. I don't know. It's kind of weird. Kind of a weird year for the Heisman, but let's talk a little bit. I want to get into some of these coaching changes, some of the ones that occurred after our last show. Can't recall if we had talked a little bit about Deion taking over at Colorado, because it was rumored, but when we last got together, it had not been finalized. First off, what were your thoughts when you heard Deion's name being announced as accepting the job? What did you think about his initial press conference that they filmed him talking to his players? And what do you expect from him in year 1 in Boulder?
Well, I thought it was kind of weird how he talked to his players, because it was basically, in some ways, he was almost escorting them out the door. But I mean, granted, I don't know the guy, but looking at who he's bringing in as assistant coaches, I mean, bringing in Sean Lewis as your offensive coordinator, the old head coach from Kent State, I mean, they're definitely not playing a pro-style offense. That's going to be a lot of yards, a lot of speed. It's something kids want to play in because it's a lot of fun. And now you bring in Charles Kelly from Alabama, the old defensive coordinator under Jimbo Fisher at Florida State. I mean, those are 2 good moves. Plus, you still have Tim Brewster as your recruiting guy, and we all know what Tim Brewster can do from a recruiting standpoint. And plus, you got the transfer portal. I mean, the only question mark I have right now is he already named his son the starting quarterback. Who in the heck are you going to get in to be the backup? Because if you know you're not going to start, why would you go there?
Yeah, that's a good point. Now, he already signed a recruit, one of the ESPN top 300. He signed the number 8 overall running back. So he's already proven that he can recruit. But I took a little issue with the filming of the initial meeting with the players. If he wants to tell them all to get the hell out, I have really no problem with that. They were 1-11.
Right.
That he's the coach now. If he doesn't want any of those guys there, hell, get rid of every single one of them.
Absolutely.
I have no problem with that whatsoever. But why film it? And why embarrass these kids and then put it on the damn internet? That to me bothered me. If I was one of those players, I'd be pissed off. If I was one of those players' parents, I'd be pissed off. And honestly, if I was a member of the Colorado administration, I would not have been real happy with that. But you know what? They turned this over to Deion. They basically turned their program over to him, and they're going to have to, kind of put up with Deion and let him do whatever he wants. Deion's kind of his own guy and does his own thing. And we all know that, but I just didn't really like the way that he was kind of get the hell out of here, hit the portal. I'm bringing my own Gucci baggage. Well, great. That's fine. Do whatever you want. But, why have 4 cameras in there and film these kids' reaction when they're getting told to get the hell out?
Well, this is either going to work really well and change the landscape of college football completely, or this is going to bomb out. There is no in between. Because, I mean, it's either kids are going to completely grasp into this, and this is going to be the new age of football. And the Kirk Ferentzes of the world are literally going to become dinosaurs. I mean, heck, Nick Saban. Can you imagine Nick Saban doing half this stuff or even a quarter of it? No. But this could change everything. I mean, let's be honest. Deion and Brian Bosworth changed marketing in college football. They became brands. They invented being a brand as a college football player. And is this just another evolution of that? I don't know, but I mean, heck, I think Rick George's biggest concern right now is he's got to find the money. He's got to. He still doesn't have the money to pay Deion yet. Where's he going to come up with that? I mean, I can't even imagine what that conversation with the Board of Regents is going to be. It's like, well, we're going to pay him this amount, but we don't have it yet.
Yeah, I don't know how you do that. How do you get a contract written up and have it signed and executed and not have the cash to fulfill the contract? That to me is a little strange. I was kind of weirded out by that. To be honest, I didn't really understand how you would go ahead and sign a coach and bring him on campus and have him start working and don't have the money to pay him. I thought that was weird. And then why would you admit that to the national media that, we got him, we brought him in, we got this big contract for Deion and we don't have the money yet? I mean, lie to me or, make it sound better than it is, buddy. I don't know.
Well, I think the one thing that he has to do, and he's already started with it, is keeping on friend of the show, and really a hallmark of that program, and Darian Hagan. I mean, there is nobody more Colorado football than Darian Hagan, and that can help create that bond with the past and who Colorado football is with what Deion Sanders and Coach Prime wants to do. I mean, you'll never see a bigger fan than me, and I guarantee you too as well, of Darian Hagan and what he could help provide and really restore the pride and tradition that Coach McCartney created in Boulder.
Yeah, I mean, I love Darian. Darian's one of my favorite players of all time. He's one of my favorite people of all time. I think that was the one move that Deion has made so far that I really agreed with and really appreciated was keeping Darian around. Darian is Colorado football.
Yeah.
Not just for what he did on the field, but for the fact that he's been on the staff pretty much consecutively since 2006. And, he understands the fans. He understands the program. He understands Colorado football. I think that was the one thing that I was really, really impressed with.
Yeah.
As far as Deion goes, was keeping Darian around. I thought he'd probably get rid of him, honestly, just because he just didn't want, he wanted to clean house, and he got rid of every single assistant coach except for him.
Yeah.
And is going to bring in his own staff, which most coaches do. So I wasn't shocked by that, but I was very pleasantly surprised that he brought him in. One of the other coaching moves that I want to talk about to you, something kind of weird here. First off, Scott Satterfield leaves Louisville to become the head coach at Cincinnati. I'm not so sure how great of a job, Louisville is, but I didn't think that Cincinnati was that much better. So I was kind of confused by that. I want to get your thoughts on A, Satterfield leaving Louisville to go to Cincinnati, and then B, Jeff Brom leaving Purdue to go home to Louisville. Obviously, Jeff Brom has ties to the Louisville team, so that didn't really shock me. But what was your thoughts about Satterfield leaving Louisville to go to Cincinnati, and then, obviously Jeff Brom taking over at Louisville, and where does Purdue go now?
Well, there's two things here. I mean, honestly, the Satterfield move doesn't surprise me based on when the Baylor job opened up and he openly talked about how he interviewed for the job. And it ruffled some feathers in Louisville that he did that. And ever since then, he's never been on good footing at that university. And I think if he would have kept his mouth shut, I don't think this move would have happened. But now it's kind of like almost they forced his hand because, I mean, they just haven't played particularly well. I mean, they played better at the end of the year this year. I thought they really came on strong. at the end. But I mean, now Cincinnati moving to the Big 12. I think this is a Dana Holgerson to Houston kind of move where he's basically trying to buy himself some more time. So, in essence, I think it's a smart hire. I thought Cincinnati was going to go more in the line of Brian Hartline, just from a recruiting aspect, because, I mean, look what he's done recruiting-wise. But when Louisville job opened up, they had one candidate, and this candidate turned him down once, and there will be no ask of a third time. And there is nobody more Louisville than Jeff Brom and the Brom family. I mean, heck, he grew up there. He played high school ball there. He recruited there. I mean, he is what Darian Hagan is to Colorado is what Jeff Brom is to Louisville. And I think it's a good move because let's be honest, with Purdue, I think he hit their ceiling. And I think he realized it. And I think it's a good move for him overall. I mean, will he make as much money? No, but will he have job security for as long as he wants?
Yeah, I mean, I think there'll be some expectations for him to win there.
Yeah.
I think they'll want him to improve on Saturday. I mean, honestly, Satterfield to me was kind of a disappointment these last couple of years.
Oh, yeah.
I saw Malik Cunningham as the quarterback, and I was like, man, they're kind of set up to win here. And I figured they would compete in a weak ACC. But really, they did not. And I thought that their season was kind of a disappointment, in my opinion. They finished 7-4 over. Oh, wait, 7. Where'd they finish? Were they 7-5 or were they?
I'm looking that up right now. I know they closed well.
I'm trying to think if they won the last game. I know they were 7-4. And then they
7-5,
lost,
7-5,
and then they lost to Kentucky. So that was kind of embarrassing, losing to Kentucky after Kentucky got bitch slapped by about 3 or 4 teams, including Vanderbilt, down the stretch. So, that to me, they were ranked 25 going into that game, and they had a very seasoned quarterback who to me was a pretty good player, and so I didn't really understand. Their season this year. It was kind of a weird season for Louisville. They started off at Syracuse and lost big 31-7, kind of embarrassed, came back, won against UCF and then lost, and then they won and then they lost. It was just kind of going back and forth, including a very disappointing loss to Boston College. It was kind of weird, and I'm not sure why. I'm confused as to why Cincinnati thought that was the way to go.
I mean, you look back at his time at Appalachian State. I mean, this guy definitely knows football. I just, after that Baylor move, it just didn't seem right. It seemed like everything was going off the edges. But honestly, on top of that, I mean, look at how much when Tutu Atwell and Fitzpatrick graduated and moved on from the program, how they really haven't been the same. I mean, Malik Cunningham's still been there, but they're not nearly as explosive as they once were. I mean, Tutu Atwell, I remember his father at Minnesota, and the guy was incredibly fast with electric hips. And he literally, honestly, it was like watching his father play. And they didn't have that kind of person on that roster after they left. And it really hurt them.
Yeah. I mean, this guy, Satterfield has an overall coaching record of 76-48. He's 4-1 in bowl games. He obviously did some good things at Appalachian State, won 3 Sun Belt titles, won the Sun Belt East Division in 2018. That's impressive to me, but I just don't know. I just didn't see a whole lot these last couple of years from Louisville where I was like, man, he's really getting it done in the ACC. But, that we'll see how it works out. Who do you think is going to be in the running for the Purdue job? That's kind of the only really big job that's still available. Who is still out there that you think, is up for this job? Who do you think Purdue wants to hire, and who do you think they will hire?
There are 4 names that kind of like stick out in my head for this job, one of which we've already talked about. I think Brian Hartline is going to be talked about more and more, and I think it's going to force Ryan Day to I know, but it's going to force Ryan Day to make him a co-OC, I think. And honestly, with Kevin Wilson moving on to Tulsa, I think that could happen. Jim Leonard, the former DC and interim coach at Wisconsin's name is going to get kicked around. Dan Mullen, I think he's got ties to the Midwest. When he was with Urban at Bowling Green, and then another name, Sean Lewis, the former head coach at Kent State, now offensive coordinator at Colorado. I think his name's going to be brought up a lot because, that offense he runs is very exciting to play. And I think it's recruiting kids to that type of system would be a lot easier to do.
How about a couple other names that I've heard? I want to get your thoughts on these real quick for the Purdue job. One, the head coach at Western Kentucky, Tyson Helton. Two, the head coach at Wake Forest, Dave Clawson.
Oh,
and three.
Dave Clawson would be fantastic.
And three, I've heard Matt Campbell's name. So that's three guys that I've heard discussed for the Purdue job is Tyson Helton from Western Kentucky, Dave Clawson from Wake Forest, and also Matt Campbell. Out of those three, I don't think Campbell's going anywhere. I really don't think he's going to leave to go to Purdue. So let's take him out of that. Between those two guys, I think if they could get Clawson, I think that would be a home run. And honestly, I think Purdue is a better job than Wake Forest. You agree with that?
Oh, 100%. Honestly, Matt Campbell does make some sense because let's be honest, there is a ceiling in Ames. You're always going to be second fiddle to Iowa, and he's got really good recruiting chops in the state of Ohio. You saw that at Toledo. It would be an interesting move because West Lafayette to Ohio is only a hour and a half, 2 hour drive minimum. To Columbus, it's probably close to 4, not even. And
from West Lafayette?
To Columbus. Yeah. It wouldn't be that far. Honestly, it'd be intriguing. The one thing I've noticed with Purdue over the years is, they don't recruit the Midwest particularly well. You go back, they always recruited Florida and Texas extremely hard, and even Kentucky. And bringing in a guy like Campbell could be intriguing because they could really go into the Midwest and try to get some of those upper level kids.
Yeah, he's had a lot of opportunities to leave Iowa State.
Yeah.
And he hasn't. And it kind of seems to me like he's committed to that program. And I just don't think Purdue is the earthquake that's going to knock this guy's coaching life off its foundation. I just feel like if he was going to leave, he would have gone somewhere else before. I just don't feel like right now is when he's going to go. Although, let's be honest, this year was very disappointing in Iowa State, and they struggled this year to win games at all. So maybe this would be a good time for him. I don't know, but I like those three names. All three of them, I think, would be good fits in West Lafayette, honestly.
The one thing I love about Dave Clawson is he understood Wake and Bowling Green culture to a T. Where when you came in, they weren't going to bring in 4 or 5-star talent except their current quarterback. And they brought in 2 and 3 stars. You're going to redshirt, and you're going to stay those 4 or 5 years, and look what you become at the end. This is a testament. The last couple of years is literally proof of what he could do. Look what he did to A.T. Perry. The kid's a great receiver in that system. And it Clawson really kind of fits that mold of what Purdue wants to do from throwing the football. They're the cradle of quarterbacks.
I agree. And I think that would be a good move for Coach Clawson. I remember when he came in here, Knoxville, and it did not go well. Basically ruined the end of the Philip Fulmer tenure with his offensive coordinator work at Tennessee, and people were very angry with him around here and questioned his coaching ability. However, I knew from watching him coach at Richmond that this guy knew how to coach. It just didn't work in year one at Tennessee. That happens sometimes, but look at what he's done at Wake Forest. I think it's been unbelievable. I think he's built a hell of a program at a place that really never had a good football program, to be honest, in my opinion, over the years. They had flashes. They'd have a good year here or there, but he's built a team that's consistently competed for the ACC, and that's something that I've never seen in my lifetime at Wake Forest. And I think right now is a very good time for him to move. I think he should do it. I think he should take the Purdue job if it's offered to him, and I think he should build there and potentially, win the West next year. I mean, let's be honest, it's not that tough to win the West. So I think he could do it, and I think that'd be good for him. Another couple moves that I want to discuss. First one is down at Liberty. Obviously, Hugh Freeze got the big contract there, and then we thought he was going to stay because of the signing of the big deal, and then boom, Auburn comes in. It's like, we don't care. We're paying for that thing. We want Hugh Freeze. I thought that was a good move for Auburn. But Liberty doesn't rest on their morals. They jump out and grab Jamie Chadwell from Coastal Carolina, which I think was an excellent move. Coastal and Liberty, to me, were kind of synonymous in the sense that they were two programs that no one had really heard much of until those two coaches got there, and they really lifted them both up. So I think this is a good move for Liberty, bringing Jamie Chadwell in. And then another one that I want to get your thoughts on is UAB hiring Trent Dilfer, who's been the head coach here at Lipscomb, and then also Tom Herman going to FAU. Start off, give me your thoughts on Jamie Chadwell first, and then the other two guys.
Well, I mean, Jamie Chadwell, that was, all about the money. I heard $4 million a year. Absolutely, I would have taken that job. And I was shocked that Liberty had that kind of money. Tom Herman makes a lot of sense at FAU. I kind of thought he'd be more in line for that Cincinnati job. I understand why Cincinnati went the direction they did. But one hire that I thought was really intriguing that really hasn't been announced yet is Troy Taylor to Stanford. We talked about this with Coach Franklin a couple weeks ago about his, how much he really likes and respects the Sacramento State head coach and how he really turned that program around. I know they got beat by 3 to Incarnate Word in a freaking shootout. When you lose a game 66-63, man, woman, and child, they're all dancing in the aisles watching that game. That's crazy. And it'd be interesting to see what Coach Taylor can do in Palo Alto on the farm, because he knows the area. He knows what Stanford needs, and he runs an exciting offense that I think people are going to be wanting to go to. I'm really intrigued by that hire once it gets announced.
I think it's funny that nobody else really talked about that guy except us.
Yeah, exactly.
We had Tony Franklin on the program who talked at length, ad nauseum about about that program and about that coach and how much he liked him and how he thought that we were going to see some good things out of him moving forward. And now, here he is getting named the head coach in Stanford right now. And I didn't really expect that to come about that quickly.
I didn't either.
But wow, I think it's a good move.
It was funny as we bring that up is the other name. It was funny. As soon as Franklin mentioned those guys, I've been watching their games left and right. Like I literally watched the NDSU against Samford game yesterday in the 1AA playoffs. And I sit there and watch Chris Hatcher at Samford. If I'm Dave Clawson and I get hired at Purdue, I'm not going to lie. I'd seriously consider Hatcher as my offensive coordinator at Purdue. That would be exactly in line with what their culture is and what he's done. Another name that people aren't talking about is KJ Kinney, the Incarnate Word coach. You may remember him from his days as a quarterback at Tulsa back when, what's his name? Former Hawaii coach, Arizona State, Pittsburgh, Rice. What was his name? The head coach who always wore the headset, looked like he was a Time Life customer service representative.
Graham.
Yes. Graham.
Yeah.
He was a quarterback for Graham at Tulsa. And, man, Incarnate Word's offense is freaking crazy. Cam Ward came from Incarnate Word before he went to Washington State. And Texas State has been a program that really has never found an identity. And now you bring in a guy who's going to bring an incredibly exciting offense. That'll be interesting to watch what's going to happen there.
Yeah, he was was he the head coach at Incarnate?
He was the head coach at Incarnate Word.
Gotcha. That's what I thought. And now he's going to Texas State, right?
You got it.
Okay.
Taking over for Jake Spadaville, the old
I'm just,
A&M coach.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure we got this down for the listeners here. And obviously, as I mentioned, Trent Dilfer, who's been the head coach here at Lipscomb Academy in Tennessee for the last few years, won the state championship this year, is now taking over for the UAB Blazers. What did you think about that? And do you think, that Trent can do it at the college level?
Well, I mean, he's done a really great job, but I think really what sets him apart is his work on Elite 11.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is going to be really a quite draw. And I mean, let's be honest, UAB has really put a lot of money and resources into, I mean, they've renovated Legion Field. They're really trying to redefine that program from what Bill Clark has done. And Bill Clark did a hell of a job. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, especially the program gets cut, he brings it back, and they became good relatively quickly. I mean, that is a really big move overall. I think Trent Dilfer is a solid hire. I think his assistants are going to be the key, though, in where that program goes.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be imperative that he brings in a good coaching staff around him, especially being a first-time collegiate head coach. But let's be honest, this guy played big-time college football at Fresno State, I believe, was a huge recruit and a huge NFL draft prospect, went to the Ravens, won a Super Bowl, played for a long time in the NFL, has been around the game, did a really good job, in my opinion. I mean, I saw him here live coaching, calling plays for the high school team, and was very impressed with what he did with that program. And like you said, his involvement with the Elite 11, he's going to have a lot of names in his Rolodex as far as recruits goes. And I think he'll get some players to come there and play for him, given his resume. A couple other names here real quick that I want to talk about before we get into our final year awards here is obviously the kid from down the road here at Tennessee, Alex Galesh, who got hired at South Florida. Galesh led Tennessee's offense to the number one ranking, was number one both in scoring and total offense. He has experience building a winning organization when he was with Matt Campbell at Iowa State. South Florida, this is a program that kind of has to take a chance on a guy.
Yeah.
And, this guy could come out and do a great job. He's also kind of an unproven guy that is an outsider and could fail. What did you think about that hire? And do you think this dude can get it done at South Florida?
I honestly think this hire is more than Alex Golish, and has got to be about a commitment at Tampa with the University of South Florida as a whole. I mean, you look at them in Central Florida, who both came on the scene roughly at the same time. What's been the biggest difference is the amount of money they've raised at Central Florida. I mean, they're not playing at the Citrus Bowl. They have their own facility on campus at the Bounce House. They got to get South Florida out of Tampa Stadium and into a different facility that's their own. And I think there's got to be a realistic commitment. And once that happens, I mean, I think you're going to get those kids out of the Tampa area to stay home and play there. I mean, there is so much talent on that I-4 corridor that you could really win at South Florida. Now, there are two names, the people that got hired, that I sit there and scratch my head out. And one is Kevin Wilson at Tulsa, and the other is Barry Odom at Arkansas. Now, both these guys are retreads, former coordinator.
I thought Barry Odom got hired at UNLV.
I mean, that's what I said. What did I say?
Well, he's from Arkansas.
Oh, yeah. He got hired at UNLV. Yeah, the former Arkansas defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
He used to be a head coach at Missouri. And, I mean, he took over for Gary Pinkel, who, let's be honest, did a phenomenal job.
He was a legend.
When he took over, Missouri looked disjointed. And when he left the program, he left on his own to become the defensive coordinator. But this makes sense.
They would have helped him out the door.
Yeah, they had to help pack the boxes. I mean, it just Missouri just didn't look right. And Kevin Wilson, I mean, if you remember his time at Indiana, sure they could score 50 points, but they're going to give up 60. And their defenses were horrendous.
I'm always very cautious about the hiring of an offensive coordinator who doesn't call the plays. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like, what the hell do you do? I mean, I know you assist with the game plan. I know you help Ryan Day, but Ryan Day is the play caller for Ohio State. Everyone knows it. Hell, everyone complains about it. So I don't know. I just was kind of confused by that. I'm happy for Coach Wilson. I hope he does a good job, but I was kind of confused about that hire myself, as I never really get going out and getting a guy that's an offensive coordinator that doesn't call the plays.
Yeah, remember Kevin Wilson called the plays though under Stoops when he and Sumlin were co-coordinators back when they had Matt Stafford, not Matt Stafford. Who's the Heisman Trophy? Sam Bradford. When they had Sam Bradford at quarterback and they were putting up video game stats. I mean, he knows how to call plays, but it just, man, what I saw at Indiana was just bad. I mean, their defense was just porous. I mean, offensively, man, they could put up points like they were playing freaking Tecmo Bowl, and they had Barry Sanders everywhere. But defensively, man, I think middle school teams could have freaking ran the ball down their throat. And heck, Navy proved it.
Well, then he should fit in well at Tulsa, because that's kind of what Tulsa does. So sounds like that might be a good move, actually. Want to get your thoughts real quick. Obviously, not a coaching change going on at Minnesota. However, right in your backyard there in the Twin Cities area, Coach PJ Fleck has been awarded a 7-year, $42 million extension, which gives him basically $1 million raise over his previous contract. What did you think about the timing of that? And were you happy with the way that your Gophers finished out the year?
I honestly, it doesn't surprise me. And this had less to do with money and more to do with expanding the buyout. Did the Gophers underperform this year? Absolutely. But you look at the amount of injuries they had too as well, especially, Tanner Morgan really never stepped up after 2019. Now, I think that's going to change with Kellen McManus at quarterback. But when you lost Chris Ottman-Bell, they became very one-dimensional overall, and one of those receivers never truly stepped up. I think Daniel Jackson definitely did over time, but it doesn't shock me. I mean, in this day and age, I think coaches have more leverage with the transfer portal the way where it is right now. Did I think he was going to get stolen somewhere else? No. But I think this had more to do with the buyout than anything else. And I think you're going to see a lot of schools like that where they're going to make the buyouts harder for schools to take their coaches.
Hey, you know what? If they didn't have that 3-game stretch in the middle where they lost to Purdue on that very weird game that me and you talked about at nauseum, the Illinois game, which just never really went well. And then when they got blasted by Penn State, at that point I was kind of like, what in the hell is going on?
Yeah.
I was really confused as to what was happening there. And then they finished strong. The opponents were weaker, but let's just be honest, they could have gone off the rails there. Okay?
Yeah, they could have. Yeah.
You lose those 3 games, especially the last one, 45-17 at Penn State. You could have lost your team. You could have lost the locker room. The guys could have just not given an F anymore. And they didn't. They came back and they whipped Rutgers 31-0. They beat Nebraska in a close game. They destroyed Northwestern. They lost to Iowa, but then they came back and beat Wisconsin 23-16 in the finale.
Well, I mean, heck,
for the
they should have beat Iowa. I mean, you had 2 turnovers in the last 4 minutes of the game while you're trying to take them out, and you allow that to happen. I mean, heck, I look at the Purdue game. If Mo Ibrahim plays, we win.
Yeah.
It's not like Purdue dominated us. I mean, the only games I thought we were completely dominated in was Illinois. I never felt like we ever had any handle on that game. And Penn State owned us from the jump. I mean, that was Cal McManus' first start, and it was just bad from the jump. I mean, how do you put a freshman into the whiteout? I mean, you can't do that. I mean, it's just
not smart.
Yeah.
Not smart, but let's call a spade a spade. He finished 8-4. They finished second in the Big Ten West. And like I mentioned, I was very impressed with how they came back after that rough go there. Lance Leopold gets his extension in Kansas.
Well deserved.
We knew that was coming. Kalen DeBoer gets an extension in Washington. We saw that coming. Dabo Swinney gets an extension. The guy farts 10-win season, so wasn't really impressed, surprised by that. The one that did kind of surprise me was Kentucky and giving an extension to Coach Mark Stoops, which will keep him with the Wildcats through 2030. Got to be honest. Supposedly, Will Levis is the greatest quarterback in the history of college football, and Kentucky just took a nosedive this year. What happened to Kentucky, and why does Mark Stoops get no blame for it?
I think Kentucky remembers what life was before Mark Stoops.
Yeah.
And I think they're realistic in who they are. I mean, Mark Stoops has got the greatest contract of mankind. If he goes 7-5, he gets an extension. It's built into the contract. And I mean, because let's be honest, there's a lot. It would be hard to buy out Mark Stoops. And
you almost can't now. I mean, with this deal going through 2030, and I believe, the buyout's over $10 million.
Yeah. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Iowa would hire him tomorrow if they could when Ferentz leaves. I mean, because he played at Iowa. There's the connection there. But you're seeing coaches now take stability over the huge payout. And Jeff Brom is a perfect example of that. I mean, Jeff Brom is making, $6 million a year, where at Purdue he's making $7 million a year. I mean,
that's weird to me. Taking a job where you make less money, I don't really understand that, especially when you just took that team to the Big Ten championship game.
It is. But the thing is, if you're coaching longer, you're still making $6, $7, $8 million a year. If you're not coaching, you're making nothing.
I understand that, but it's not. Do you think Purdue was going to fire him this year?
No, I didn't.
I didn't either. That's what
I think they were afraid that he was going to leave at some point, though. And Louisville, I knew he didn't think that Louisville would ask him a third time. It was the Roy Williams problem when he was at Kansas when North Carolina came calling.
Yeah. No, I understand that. Okay, well, let's crazy world of college football, man. I honestly almost like the coaching changes as much as I like the transfer portal. Transfer portal is too hard to keep track of, but the coaching changes are pretty cool. Let's do our conference awards now and get your thoughts on who were the players of the year in each of our conferences. And then if we have a couple minutes at the end, we can talk about some of the names that are sticking out to us in the portal. Let's start off with the Heisman Trophy winners conference out there in the Pac-12. Who was your player of the year in the Pac-12 conference, James?
Offensively, you had to go with Caleb Williams, but honest to God, you could make an incredibly strong argument for Michael Penix Jr. And that is a testament to Kalen DeBoer, which, we talked going into the season. I thought it was going to take him a little longer to develop this out. In 1 year, he's taken his team to a whole new level offensively. This is crazy. Defensively, I struggled with this one. I went with Clark Phillips, the cornerback out of Utah. You could do the Samoan kid, Tuliapoto from USC. I think you could make a strong argument for him. But, I think Clark Phillips really stood out, especially down the stretch for the Utes. Who do you got?
I agree. He was unbelievable. And honestly, at the end of the year, I liked the season that DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, put together at UCLA. I thought that, the games that UCLA lost, it wasn't really all on him. But, let's be honest, that program was in shambles.
Yeah.
When Coach Kelly got out there and really Coach Kelly turned it around. And one of the reasons that he turned it around was he got Dorian Thompson-Robinson and got him to stay for the duration. And he really stuck out to me as a guy that got better and had a tremendous season. And, as much as I like DTR, I also have to give it up to his running back, Zach Charbonnet.
Yeah.
This guy had almost 1,400 yards, 14 touchdowns. But it wasn't just that. It was the consistency of this guy. Every single week, he was out there. He was making it happen. Hell, last year, he ran for over 1,100 yards and had 13 touchdowns. Then he follows it up with almost 1,400 yards and 14 touchdowns this year. And then the big thing to me about looking at him is average. Last year, he averaged 5.6 yards a carry. This year, he averaged 7 yards a carry. When you got a guy that can get 7 yards a pop, you're in business.
Yeah. I mean, hell, UCLA was 4th in the country in rushing. UCLA. I mean, you go back to the Terry Donahue days. If that ever happened, I mean, they'd be sitting there scratching their head.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I was very impressed with the season that those two guys put together, and finishing 9-3 in the Pac-12. I know things didn't go as they wanted to. I know they wanted to finish strong and beat Arizona and beat USC, but it's not like they got blown out. They lost to USC 48-45 in a thriller, and they came up a little bit short against Arizona, which was very, very disheartening, but still a long way. They've come a long way from where they were at. Coaching wise, I give Kalen DeBoer the coach of the year in the Pac-12.
How do you not?
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, the only other coach I'd say you can give a running argument to would be Jonathan Smith at Oregon State.
Yes.
But I mean, honestly, Kalen DeBoer, in my opinion, just runs away with it. I think he'd be talked about more if it wasn't for Sonny Dykes.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly. And I agree with you, too, about the Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, just watching him in that Pac-12 championship game, it was like every time they needed a big play, every time, they needed, USC needed a first down, it was like he knocked the ball down. He had the guy so tight in coverage that Williams had to throw it away. I mean, it was just unbelievable. So I've got to give it up to him and give him the Defensive Player of the Year award as well. Mentioned Sonny Dykes. Let's go over to the Big 12. Who did you have for your Big 12 Player of the Year, and why?
Offensively, you had to go with Duggan. I mean, what he did to lead this team was honestly phenomenal. I was blown away by this kid. I mean, he was a kid that didn't even start at the beginning of the year. I mean, people were talking about him transferring. And look at what he did. I mean, rather than trying to go somewhere else with his greener pastures, he stayed, gutted it out, and the guy finished second in the Heisman, where he didn't even start on his own roster at the beginning of the year. I mean, people are going to bring up Bijan Robinson. I'm sorry. The bigger the game, the more that guy sunk into the hole. I mean, the TCU game, he had 29 yards total offense? I mean, if you don't give it to Duggan, I think you need to get your eyes checked. Defensively, I think you got to go with the D lineman from Kansas State and Uzomah. I think you can make an argument for Newton, but I mean, Kansas State's defensive line really dictated that team this year. And we talked about K-State early in the year, and people thought we were crazy. Yeah. I honestly thought Adrian Martinez was going to be a better quarterback than he was. Look at Will Howard did. I mean, they just took it to a whole new level, and that Sugar Bowl is going to be interesting between them and Bama.
Yeah, and honestly, it's not like Adrian Martinez fell on his face either.
No,
I thought he played pretty well until he got hurt. He had him rolling just fine. They had that one hiccup against Tulane, but other than that, he was pretty impressive. And I think both those quarterbacks did a pretty good job. And I think you're right. I've never seen a defensive tackle come out and make an impact like that, like Uzomah, except, going back to, Ndamukong Suh and maybe Jalen Carter from Georgia. But this kid, 44 tackles, 8.5 sacks, 50 sack yards. He had a pass defense. He had 2 forced fumbles, multiple tackles for loss. This kid is the real deal. And if I'm, picking in the draft, and I need somebody to solidify my defensive line, this is the kid that I choose. He's absolutely unbelievable and is definitely my defensive player of the year. I did kind of consider Bijan Robinson. I know the TCU game was not great for him, but honestly, there weren't any holes. That offensive line got dominated, and there really wasn't anywhere to run. But you still can't, deny the season that he had and the numbers that he put up with. A lot of times you knew that he was getting the ball. Yeah. And Bijan Robinson, averaged over 6 yards a carry, 1,500 yards plus, almost 1,600 yards, 18 touchdowns on the ground. The Tucson native certainly performed. And you know what? If I'm going to go ahead and answer this one for you, because if you don't make Sonny Dykes your coach of the year in the Big 12, I got nothing for you.
Yeah, I mean, what do we even have to say anything else?
No.
I mean,
No.
I don't even know who you'd put second. Honestly, I mean Lance Leopold, but
maybe Sonny Dykes.
I mean, I would have said Lance Leopold, but they ended poorly. But I mean, granted, Lance Leopold did a great job.
He did.
No
He did.
Expected Kansas to be over their win total by the end of September, and I'm blown away.
Yeah, no, Kansas had a good season. They definitely outperformed. I mean, 6-6 at Kansas is a hell of a year, and being bowl eligible is big time. But like you mentioned, they lost the last 3 games, and Texas and Kansas State I could understand, but getting drubbed 55-14 to Texas was kind of surprising to me, and getting blown out by Texas Tech also kind of shocked me. Let's jump over to the ACC, which, man, I don't know who the hell you give any awards to in this conference, because this conference sucks, in my opinion. And I was not impressed at all with the end of the season from some of these teams. But they still are, as of today, a Power 5 conference. So allegedly we have to talk about them. Allegedly, we have to acknowledge them. Who's your ACC player of the year?
Offensively, I think you got to go with Drake May. He did a phenomenal job for that offense. I mean, too bad they had a Conference USA defense. Thank you, Gene Chizik, for proving once again why Auburn should have fired you when they had the chance. He did great. I think you could make an argument for the running back from Pitt. I think he put up video game numbers, but I mean, Drake May really did a good job for that offense. Now, defensively, this was tough, but I had to go with Yasir Abdullah, the linebacker out of Louisville. I mean, 8 sacks, 2 interceptions, 57 tackles. I mean, he really had a great year, but there was nobody in the ACC that really stood out to me. I thought Jacob Verse had a shot at it, but and he'll probably be a top 15 pick. But I mean, I got to go with Abdullah because he put the collection of the entire year together.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people are high on May, and he did put up some good numbers throughout the season. But I look back at that North Carolina Wake Forest game.
Yeah.
Georgia Tech game, where Georgia Tech was playing their third string quarterback and blew them out. That was kind of confusing to me. And I got to be honest, I kind of was impressed with Jordan Travis this year at Florida State. I mean, he threw for 3,000 yards, 22 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions. This guy's come a long way. And if you look, really they had that rough stretch where they lost to Wake, NC State, and Clemson in a row. But other than that, they won every game. And they're going to get a bowl game against Oklahoma, which I thought was very strange considering Florida State, the Noles, are 9-3, and Oklahoma's 6-6. That was kind of weird to me. But what did you think about Jordan Travis?
Honestly, the development of that kid over the last few years has been phenomenal. Like when I first saw him, I'm like, how is this guy even? I mean, how's he on the field? I mean, is their depth at quarterback that bad? And now you look at the kid, he looks confident. He looks poised. He's leading that huddle. I mean, they don't win the LSU game if it wasn't for Jordan Travis.
There's no doubt.
I was blown away by the kid. And you could make it, honestly, I got to say, I'd pick Florida State right now to go in next year. I mean, depending on what they get in the portal, you got to pick them to win the ACC.
Yeah, I do. I think that Coach Norvell is doing a good job. I mean, I think about where Florida State was at when he got there, and, the Willie Taggart disaster. That was just a mess. Watching them lose games to teams that just had extremely different talent level than them just blew me away. I mean, it was horrible to watch. And now I think he's brought back some respectability to Florida State football. And I think the future is looking bright. This is a guy who's proven that he can be a good coach. He certainly did a great job at Memphis, and now Florida State, I think, is making hay. And I honestly given him my coach of the year just because of the way they finished the season out, beating Florida, beating Syracuse 38-3, taking out Miami. I mean, they won the Florida championship, right? They beat the Canes. They beat the Gators. You win Florida, you win the recruiting battles, right?
Yeah, but I mean, let's be honest. It's not like the days of old where the state championship was that big of a deal. I mean, this is one where the state championship was much weaker than it was in the past. Um, Honestly, I'm going to go with Mike Elko at Duke. I mean, in his first year, I mean, I'm not going to lie. In the Coastal, I had them finishing last. And yes, last below Georgia Tech. And they went 8-4 at Duke.
Yeah, no, it's impressive.
I mean, this is crazy. I mean, if I'm Purdue right now, I'm shocked I'm not hearing Mike Elko's name being jabbered around at other jobs.
I have not heard it.
I mean, because honestly, if you can win at Duke, you can win. I mean, Steve Spurrier won at Duke. David Cutcliffe, we know he can win. And now you got Mike Elko in year one. I got to say, I'm a huge Mike Elko fan. I question this hire to begin with. Man, don't listen to me. This was a great hire. I'm looking forward to seeing what they're going to do in the bowl game.
Yeah, me also. So we've got another little conference left, and that would be first off the Big Ten. We've seen this season, got to be honest, I wasn't expecting what we saw out of the Wolverines. I thought they lost a lot off of last year's team. They lost both coordinators. I kind of expected them to take a step back, and to be honest, they did not. And I've got to give them credit for that. They exceeded my expectations for sure. Who do you give the Big Ten Player of the Year for after watching the season?
Easy. Spencer Petras from Iowa. No, I'm kidding. CJ Stroud. I mean, and I think it's running away. I think you can make an argument for Marvin Harrison Jr. I think you can make an argument for Blake Corum. But, I mean, CJ Stroud, I mean, the quarterback at Ohio State, I think there's some skills he's got to work on. I think people thought we're anointing him the next Justin Fields. I don't think he's as polished as Justin Fields is, even though he's got better receivers to work with. But honestly, if he shows out in the national championship against Georgia, I mean, we may be having a different conversation here. Defensively, this was a no freaking brainer. If you didn't pick Jack Campbell, the linebacker from Iowa, I don't know if you know how to watch football. I mean, the guy's a freaking pterodactyl out there. I mean, Iowa's offense was an absolute disaster, and he was keeping them in games single-handedly. I mean, he and Seth Benson were outstanding. I mean, Kayvon Merriweather, Riley Moss, and the D-backs. I mean, I'm shocked Phil Parker didn't get assistant coach of the year for what they did.
No, I agree with you, and I think he's probably the best defensive player out there, but I think we'd be remiss if we didn't give a little bit of credit to Eichenberg, the linebacker at Ohio State. This guy has gotten so much better across the board for the Buckeyes. This guy was a difference maker this year. At times when the Buckeyes were struggling in some of these close games where it could have gone either way, this guy showed up and made tackles. He got everybody aligned properly in the right position of where they were supposed to be. I got to be honest, I wasn't expecting a whole lot out of the linebackers at Ohio State this year. But if you would have told me the kind of season that Eichenberg was going to have prior to the season, I would have told you were crazy. This guy finished with 112 tackles, 72 of them solo, 2.5 sacks, 3 passes defense, an interception, multiple tackles for loss. This guy was the leader of that defense and hands down was the best player on the field defensively for the Buckeyes. So I think Eichenberg deserves a lot of credit. I'm with you though. Campbell is the winner. CJ Stroud. I don't know if you heard what RG3 said about Stroud. Did you hear what?
No, what he said?
Okay, this was a quote from Robert Griffin III, former Heisman Trophy winner for Baylor. He said, CJ Stroud has been so phenomenal for Ohio State. We've become spoiled by his greatness. No quarterback in the country has made more NFL throws. Igbuka and Harrison Jr. were both 1,000-yard receivers because of CJ's ability to be a primetime distributor of the football. Give him his roses. Do you agree with that? Because I do.
I do. But I mean, at the same time, would you put him, if you compare him to Justin Fields and had to go head to head, who would you take? Fields or Stroud?
Fields.
I would too.
Justin
in a
Fields.
Heartbeat. I mean,
there's no doubt, but Justin Fields doesn't play in college football anymore.
True.
So I'm just saying that I agree with RG3 that a lot of people are, don't give CJ Stroud his credit because they just expect him to be phenomenal. They expect him to win every single game. They expect him to throw for 350, 3 touchdowns minimum every single game. And, if he doesn't do that, he's a loser. But if he does, no one says anything. And
you're right. You're right. The bar got raised so high for him that it was impossible for him to clear it. And, there's another quarterback just like that in Bryce Young.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, Bryce Young is in the same exact boat. I mean, let's talk about Coach of the Year, and then we'll get to the SEC. I got to take Harbaugh. I mean, with the guy interviewed with the Vikings on signing day. I mean, we were laughing thinking this has got disaster written all over it. And they go 13-0. I mean, how he got that locker room back together is beyond me after losing both coordinators. Yeah. Losing 3 first-round draft picks on your offense, on your defense. And he's back again. It looks like the Stanford days all over again.
Yeah, I can't give him Coach of the Year. I hate him. So, anybody else?
Hey, anybody but Harbaugh. All right, let's talk SEC then.
Okay, let's do that. Who's your SEC player of the year? Let me go first on this one since I live here. I've got to go Hendon Hooker. I've got to be honest. This is just monumental what he's done. I mean, look at where he was at, fighting for playing time for a bad Virginia Tech team, transferring at the last moment, losing the starting job to Joe Milton, coming in against Pittsburgh after Milton goes down and never looking back, being an extremely good young man, a leader of men, and taking Tennessee to the #1 ranking in the country, beating Alabama at their own game. I got to be honest, I haven't seen anything like this since 2001 when Casey Clausen was at the helm of the Tennessee Volunteers. Hendon Hooker's definitely my offensive player of the year.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you. I mean, you look over the past 2 years, Hendon Hooker has thrown for 58 touchdowns and 5 interceptions.
Unbelievable.
I mean, that is just batshit crazy. Yeah. I mean, let's be honest, it's batshit crazy. I mean, now on the flip side, Bryce Young had a hell of a year. The problem was, once again, the CJ Stroud problem. The bar is so freaking high, but he didn't have the receiving core he had last year.
No.
It was Bryce Young, and who gives a crap? And that guy was running for his life all the time. Yeah, and no matter what he did, it was never enough.
No, their offensive line was not as solid as it was in years past. The receiving core wasn't even close. And he still was, the straw that stirred the drink down in Alabama. There's no doubt. But you look at the head-to-head. Hendon Hooker won the game. Hendon Hooker missed the final game, still threw for over 3,100 yards, 27 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. That, to me, is just phenomenal. And then you forget this guy can run the ball, too. He ran for over 430 yards, had 5 touchdowns on the ground. That's 32 touchdowns to 2 interceptions for the quarterback of Tennessee. And as I mentioned, wasn't even really supposed to be the starter when he got here last year. So this guy definitely deserves it. Who is your defensive player of the year in the SEC conference?
This is going to be controversial, but I'm taking Jalen Carter.
Yeah.
Because honestly, you look at, don't get me wrong, Will Anderson had a hell of a year. But Jalen Carter was a disruptive force on that defense. That was one of the best, if not the best, in the entire country. And I had seeing people put him second team All-American. I'm like, did you watch any Georgia football this year?
Yeah.
I'm like, this guy was all over the place. Honestly, if he's not in the top 7 picks, we got a problem.
Oh, he will be. He will be. I thought he was their best defensive lineman last year.
Oh yeah,
which is absolutely crazy considering the amount of guys they had on that defensive line. But think about this dude. I mean, 29 tackles, three sacks. The guy is what 6'6", over 300 and something pounds. I mean, dude is just an absolute monster of a man, and caused 2 fumbles. I mean, when he's in the game, he's hard to move.
Yeah.
And not only is he hard to move, but he's a disruptor. He gets in the backfield, he makes plays, he dictates what the other team can do running the football. I don't think it's controversial at all. I think he's the best defensive player in the conference.
I mean, I look at him at the next level, and Jalen Carter can either be an A gap guy or a C gap guy in the NFL. How many D tackles do you know that could do both, except maybe the Domicon Sue when he came out of college?
Yeah.
Seriously, not many.
Cortez Kennedy, maybe?
Maybe Russell Maryland, maybe?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of anybody else at that position. He's just so dominant. I mean, now, SEC Coach of the Year, I want to hear what you have to say first.
SEC Coach of the Year, I mean, there's 3 guys, in my opinion, that are up for it. One is Josh Heupel here at Tennessee, taking them to the number 1 ranking in the country, beating Alabama for the first time in 15 years. All of that, I think, needs to be considered. I think you also need to consider how the season ended for South Carolina and look at Shane Beamer and what he's done, beating 2 top 10 teams 2 weeks in a row, taking out it's not like the Vols had nothing left to play for. All they had to do was beat South Carolina, and they go to the national championship playoff, and they couldn't do it. They couldn't even come close. And I think you have to. I mean, South Carolina didn't have a running back that could suit up for this game, and you have to give Shane Beamer credit for that. And once again, we talked about C.J. Stroud and everyone expecting him to do this and do that, and Bryce Young. Well, I think the same is come true with Kirby Smart and Georgia, and you expect Georgia to win every game, and you expect Georgia to play for the national championship. Well, that's not really so, because Georgia didn't win a national championship for 40 years. But since he's been there, Kirby has done it. Going 13-0 this year, to me, is even more impressive. Winning the SEC championship again. This to me is the guy that deserves the Coach of the Year, in my opinion. 13-0 SEC champs, playing for the national championship again with Stetson Bennett at quarterback. This guy has done a tremendous job, and he's my Coach of the Year.
I agree, but I mean, I always look at Coach of the Years and what you did last year and how you upped your game this year. I got to give it to Heupel. I mean, did anybody expect a January 1st bowl, a Big 6 bowl from Tennessee going into the year? I mean, I picked them to finish second, but I didn't expect them to be in the Orange Bowl. I mean, heck, at one point we were talking about the freaking BCS playoff.
Oh, I thought they were gonna get worse. I did. I have to admit it. I thought they won 8 games last year. I thought they lost several guys off the offensive line. I thought they lost several guys off their defense. I was worried that they were going to get complacent. I just didn't know how he was going to come in and get them fired up to do it all over again. Honestly, I agree with you. I think he did an unbelievable job. That's why I put him in the 3 guys that were up for the award. I mean, I thought it was unbelievable, and I did not expect what I saw out of the Volunteers. And I agree, he did a tremendous job.
I mean, the only thing that scares me about him is kind of the Kevin Sumlin factor, that you've raised the bar so high. Now they expect this to become the norm.
Yes.
And there's some rebuilding still to do on Tennessee. I mean, their defense way outperformed what we expected of them this year. And I don't know if they could recapture that same. I mean, heck, Hendon Hooker's gone. Who's going to play quarterback next year? I mean, you're talking about a guy who had 11.5 to 1 touchdown to interception ratio, when 3 to 1 is considered great. And he went 11.5 to 1. I mean, if I'm an NFL scout, I'm sorry. How is Hendon Hooker below Will Levis?
Yeah,
please
I
tell
no
me.
idea. Even with the torn knee, I'd take Hendon Hooker.
Oh, absolutely.
10 ways from Sunday over Will Levis. You want to talk to me about Will Levis? I want to talk to you about going back to the Tennessee game.
Yeah.
And I watched it in person, live in front of my face. And I got to be honest with you, I was blown away by how poor Will Levis played. In fact, he couldn't have played worse in that ball game. And look, the stat line doesn't even tell you the story because he got some yards late when the game was over. But still, let's look at it. 16 of 27, 98 yards, and 3 interceptions against the Tennessee secondary, which, let's be honest, was not the team's strength.
Well, here's one for you. This is how low. I mean, would you rather have in the NFL Will Levis or Stetson Bennett?
I would rather have Stetson Bennett.
I would too in a heartbeat.
I don't get it.
The kid's a winner. The kid's a winner.
I don't understand what the deal is. I don't get it. I don't understand. I know he's a big guy. He's got a pretty good arm, but I've watched him play, and I look at the game film, and I'm just like, I'm lost.
I am too.
I do not see what other people are seeing. No clue. But wow. Okay. Well, anywho, we did get the finale. We got all the conferences, correct?
We got them all. I mean, all the Power Fives. That's all that matters.
That's what I mean. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And we did have the game of the year yesterday, dominated in the first half by Navy. However, they were losing 7-3 at halftime because of the blocked punt returned for a touchdown or recovered in the end zone for a touchdown. And Army got it done. When was the last time that game went to overtime?
I don't know. I was wondering that myself.
I do not remember a game that went into overtime. In fact, I believe, I'm almost 100% sure that was the first overtime game in 123 years, which is pretty phenomenal. So
that blocked. I mean, you knew it was only a matter of time before they were going to get a block punt. Like, honestly,
yeah, I could tell it. They were snapping it all over the place. The guy was bobbling it before he punted. Hell, he had to punt like 9 times in the first quarter. I figured there was going to be a problem there, and it's pretty amazing when your quarterback can go 2 of 10 for 28 yards and you win the game.
Yeah,
that's an Army-Navy game right there. The Army quarterback Ballard went 2 of 10, 28 yards, and they win 20-17 in overtime.
Hey, I remember when Georgia Southern had no passing yards and beat Florida in the swamp.
Yes.
Chop, baby.
Get it, do it to it. But anyways, another phenomenal year of college football. This is why I love this game more than any other game there is. You really do not know who's going to win any given Saturday. The upsets that can occur by teams that have no business winning is what makes this game great. I hope that the transfer portal and the NIL doesn't ruin this wonderful game, but you know what? It's 2022. Things are changing. I'm glad that these guys are getting money. I'm glad that they're allowed to jump ship if things aren't working out, or if they were sold an improper bill of goods. They should be allowed to transfer. The only thing that bothers me is the JT Daniels example where you play for 4 teams in 4 years. That's ludicrous.
He's got to get at some point he's going to become a doctor or something.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, what do you do? Like, what if someone says, "Oh, you played college football? Where did you play?" Well, I played at USC. I played at Georgia. I played at West Virginia. I played at Fresno State. I mean, who knows where he goes next?
Well,
but
remember he skipped his senior year of high school.
Yeah.
I mean, this is insane. All that matters now, does he go to an AC school, C school, or a Big Ten school? Because he's already covered the Big 12, SEC, Pac-12.
I honestly can't think of a Power 5 school that would go after this guy at this point. To be honest, I mean, I just, I don't understand why not stick it out at West Virginia and see if you can do something there next year. Why jump ship again? It makes no sense to me, and I'm baffled why you would want to go to 4 schools in 4 years. I don't get it. But
and we thought it was crazy when Tate Martell went to 3.
Yeah. Yeah, it's he kind of reminds me of Tate Martell. I think he's a little bit better than Tate Martell, but honestly, it's kind of the same deal in the sense that it's just, hasn't worked out for him. Tate went to Ohio State, went to Miami, went to UNLV, couldn't start for any of them. And that guy was the Gatorade Football Player of the Year in 2016. It's just a shame, in my opinion. Leaving and jumping ship always is not always the best answer. Sticking it out, proving that you can win a job somewhere and win some games is the way to go, in my opinion. But what the hell do I know?
Yep.
We'll be back next week. We can break down much more of this 2022 season. We're going to get into the bowl matchups in our next show, whenever that may be. We'll keep you posted. We've also got the interviews up on our YouTube page, so everybody hit that up in case you missed any of our amazing interviews for 2022. Go to the YouTube channel and check them out. James, enjoy the rest of your day. Keep your chin up.
You bet. We'll see you soon.
All right, buddy.
Bye.